Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato.
I'm Mike Palmisano from Guitargate.
I'm Rhett, Shull.
So today's topic is going to be...
Problem with American Idol.
Okay, so American Idol has been around since the early 2000s. I don't know, we're on season, 26 now or so?
40. I can't keep track. Something like that.
So I have a personal story about a really close friend of mine that was on American Idol in 2008. His name was Michael Johns. He was from Australia, but he actually lived here in Atlanta. His real name was Michael Lee, and he passed away in 2014 from a blood clot in his ankle when he was 35. And he finished he was a runner-up, but finished 8th or something like that year in 2008, the year that David Cook won. And it was a real big shocker that he was voted out then, because to me he was the best singer by far on there. I thought David Cook was a great singer, but Mike was not only a superb singer, but he was an incredibly good writer. And I happen to have done a record with him back in 2001. It's one of the first major label records I did, and I co-wrote most of the songs with him. And I remember I talked to him during the entire making of that season, American Idol. He would call me all the time and ask me what kinds of songs he would do. Of course, he would never listen to me. But one of the things was that there were a lot of restrictions on the songs that they do, because a lot of artists at the time wouldn't allow their songs to be used. There was a real stigma in the early part of American Idol that famous artists didn't want. Certain artists would never let their songs be played on there, which is kind of strange because it's
kind of like the YouTube thing.
Kind of like the YouTube, yeah. And he was trying to get songs cleared, and then he would get pushback from people like Simon, where Simon thought that he should be an R&B singer. I mean, I guess I can say this. I mean, this is things that Mike told me. And he thought that he should have been an R&B singer, and Mike wanted to be a rock singer. And Simon was probably right, actually, in retrospect on it. You know, seeing what happened with rock. Had Mike done that, well, we don't know what would have happened, but I think that Mike not listening to Simon was one of the reasons that he got booted off the show, because I don't think that this stuff is real. It's my own personal opinion, but I think that there's a lot of the things in these shows. The Voice is the same thing. I think a lot of it is manufactured. I could be totally wrong, but that's just the feeling that I get.
And this is not in any way to put down any of the contestants that have ever been on these shows, because you can't argue with the fact that there are and have been some incredibly talented vocalists that have gained recognition and notoriety from
some singers that I love, like Carrie Underwood, and Kelly Clarkson. I think is an amazingly great singer.
Right. This is in no way a dig on any of the contestants or anything like that. This is, I think, more a commentary on the overall issue that we see with shows like this. And from my perspective, as someone who kind of grew up and came into music while these shows were popular in the early to mid 2000s, and even through today, what I see is a generation of people who are my age and a little older and younger that have, that are not musicians, that are just casual music consumers, that see American Idol and The Voice and America's Got Talent as the pinnacle of musical and artistic success. And I've seen this personally a lot with a really good friend of mine who I've played with for years. And, you read the comments of a lot of his social media posts for years, where it'll be a video of him singing or performing something, and most of the responses are something along the lines of, "Oh my God, you should go on The Voice, or you should go on America's Got Talent." It's not a commentary on his songwriting. It's not a commentary on his artistry or his ability to express himself. It is, "Oh, you are good, therefore you should go and do this." And to pick up on the reality TV aspect of it, there's very little reality in reality television. I mean, I think we've seen it now long enough to know that it's mostly produced and it's mostly engineered. And while I think obviously the performances are real, the vocalists are real, beyond that, there's a lot of manufactured drama. There's a lot of manufactured storytelling, because I think the biggest problem with these shows is they're not actually about finding America or anywhere in the world's next great vocalist. They're actually about ratings and selling ad space.
And I think that they also make a point to not just have the best of the best on there. You got to have great, and you have to have not so great too, to keep people watching and to keep people doing it. And so it's very clear that, for however long that show is on, that they have to dedicate, say, 1/3 of it for people to say, oh no, that person's no good. Yeah. That person shouldn't be doing it. There's no shot that person should do it. And I just think that is, low of them. But at the same time, I will say that there's some really strong people on there. Like I grew up in Baltimore, and around town we had a friend of ours called Adam Wakefield, and he finished runner-up on The Voice a few years ago. I don't know. But we all knew for a long time that this dude was fantastic and something great would happen. And then when he finally got on The Voice, everybody was so excited because finally everybody was seeing what we had seen and heard for so long. And so on that side, I'm like, yeah, maybe people wouldn't know who he is if it wasn't for these shows. I just don't always like how, like, the stories, some of these stories, you're like, that's not the real story. And it's like these people, it's like, you didn't pick this person because you thought they were going to win. Right. Like, this is TV.
But I think there's the recognition side of it is like a double-edged sword, because yes, being on something like The Voice or American Idol is a good way to get quick, instant recognition until the next season comes around.
Right.
And then it's just they start over again with a whole new cast of people.
Case in point, name me 5 winners of American Idol, for example.
Carrie Underwood.
Kelly
Clarkson. Ruben Studdard, did he win, or was he a runner-up?
I think he won, yeah.
How many can you guys name?
yeah, without Googling it, And again, that is not a commentary on these artists' talent or ability. But to pick up on that, like, another problem that I have is I feel like it's teaching a generation of people that if you aren't as strong a vocalist as what is being portrayed on these shows, that your art and your voice and your talent is not worthy.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan would never...
That's the perfect example.
Would have never made it within a million miles of The Voice. Does that mean Bob Dylan wasn't worthy as, or isn't worthy as an artist?
I can name 10 singers. Tom Petty, Neil Young, people that are character singers, as I call them, that are some of my favorite singers. Geddy Lee, would he have won on The Voice?
No.
Perry Farrell would. We can think of. How many people can you think of?
You don't think Geddy Lee would have won on The Voice?
I think Geddy Lee would have had trouble.
Playing the bass with his feet and everything.
Maynard from Tool, he would have had trouble. Chris Cornell, though, could he have done well on The Voice? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Some
Aretha
people,
Franklin would have mopped the floor with...
Maybe. No, she would have, but maybe they would have had some drama thing where she didn't,
Exactly.
didn't win.
Exactly. And that brings in the whole reality TV aspect of there's just teams of producers working behind the scenes of these shows, just engineering drama and trying to get a storyline going. It's not just about somebody's talent. They have to have some kind of story that goes along with it, because again, these shows are not just singing competitions. They are trying to drive ratings and trying to drive
popularity contests.
Yes.
But one thing I also will say, though, is you'll see a lot of these artists show dramatic improvement over the course of, 10 weeks or 12 weeks, however long the season is?
Yeah. I've known more than one person that have been on American Idol, probably 3 or 4 people on American Idol, that have told me that they would have really bad headphone mixes or in-ear mixes on particular performances that would radically affect their pitch. That they'd have a really bad performance.
Like a backing track, half step off.
Well, whatever it might be. And now, I don't know if that's true or not.
Right.
That could obviously be human error. Obviously, people that are good to increase the drama having a bad performance.
Right.
So you're saying some of that is staged? Likely.
I think to an extent it has to be, man.
It keeps with the peaks and valleys.
I know from personal, have more than one friend that have been on one or more of these shows. I don't want to go into too much detail, and I've heard similar stories.
Yeah.
And
the ones that I know that don't have bad performances.
No.
They don't sing out of tune.
They don't
just
play
don't.
out of tune. They don't sing out of tune.
Right.
They're some of the best musicians I know of and have heard of. Now, I will say, to kind of flip this over and play devil's advocate, because I think we can just drone on about how bad these shows are. I think there are some good things that American Idol has done. I think one thing is keeping music and musicianship and musical performance relevant in popular culture.
For sure.
And as much as it has maybe discouraged some people from pursuing their voice or their artistry, I think it also has inspired a lot of people to want to be vocalists mostly, or musicians or singer-songwriters. And I think that is a positive side effect.
And another thing about it is the competitive aspect of it, to me, is actually important. I'm not one of these people that everybody wins a medal. I've just, you are judged in life based on your competency in things. And I think people that, can perform, it's just like a sport.
Absolutely.
As much as I don't like the New England Patriots, I can't. I gotta say that Tom Brady is amazing. Yeah. I mean, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, he's the best. Well, there's. Oh my God! No, but there's truth to that. It's just like if you go to a music school or conservatory or something like that, there's something to be said for being in the pressure cooker and being in the fire and being around people that you see that are great, and you want to get better, and you want to win. You get better.
Yeah, you have to be able to perform under pressure. That's a really, really important thing. And
absolutely.
And the kind of pressure that these kids, and most of the time they're kids, are under is incredible. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is.
It's immense. It's strange we don't see more train wrecks like in these big environments, like for these live shows.
No, and that's that's a testament to some of the incredibly great singers that they've had on.
It's truly amazing.
And also shout out to all of the live musicians that are playing. That is one thing I do like about The Voice specifically. You've got some heavy hitting LA session cats that are actually out there playing those tracks down live, which is fantastic. I do wish they would highlight them more and actually show that it's not just.
Do they ever show them? No.
No, if they do, you kind of see a quick shot.
Yeah, to get the shadow.
They're like in a dark corner, and you can see some dudes like reading.
But they're actually playing that stuff.
Yeah, and it's awesome.
Amazing.
It's amazing. Or you'll see a shot of them like rehearsing with the vocalist or something.
Right.
I think these shows, I'm not advocating that we completely do away. I don't think any of us are saying we should completely do away with American Idol. I'm saying there's just some things that I think are overhyped, over-dramatized, and they focus a little bit on too much of the wrong thing. I think if they did a better job of focusing on the musicianship and the artistry and the time and the effort that these people have put into honing in their talent and their craft.
Right. And not just always the sob story.
Right. And sometimes, sometimes these people do have pretty impressive sob stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's kind of a disservice to call it a sob story, but like they've come from troubled backgrounds and difficult pasts and overcome those things. And so I think you're right. Everyone loves an underdog story. Everyone loves a story of triumph. I just think that the producers know that everyone loves those stories. And so, again, from the stories I've heard of people that have actually been on those shows, there's a really big effort behind the scenes to engineer and to perfect your story, where it's like, okay, maybe this one little kernel of what they're talking about is true, but they've taken this and blown it up into this over-dramatized, overhyped thing to where it's now not... These people are not voting on your abilities as a singer. They're voting on your story and what they've been told about who you are as a person. And that just really rubs me the wrong way.
Okay, so the question is, why have there not been more famous singers out of these. We've named a few of the ones. I mean, legitimately, Carrie Underwood is the biggest singer that's ever come with
Kelly Clarkson.
With Kelly Clarkson being, those are the two.
Did all the other winners get a similar record deal as those two?
And that's another thing that I've heard. Again, I don't have specific experience with this, but I've heard that the contracts.
Oh, the contracts are ridiculous.
That you have to sign.
What kind of ridiculous? What do we like?
Well, they take 50% of everything they earn, I think, for 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, and again, I think part of the reason is.
I'm not positive of that, but I think that's what.
There's any lawyers that know this stuff.
Put in the comments if anybody's been in American Idol and they want to add to this. Like I said, we don't know this for a fact, but this is what I've heard. And Kelly Clarkson, for example, I don't know if you guys remember, she had this big to do with Clive Davis. He was unhappy with one of her records. I think it was her third record that she wanted to be involved in the songwriting, but what I imagine happened, because she had to take on a management company, so the company 19, I guess, they have a pretty onerous contract that you have to sign to get on there. And they're, in their defense, okay, we're going to put you in front of 35 million people a week.
Yeah.
So you're going to sign this contract that for 3 years we get 50% of everything you make. And in exchange, and they willingly sign these things for the platform.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's nothing wrong with that. But Kelly Clarkson would come out, and then she, I imagine, got a manager, and any manager of a big artist gets 20%. So if you take 50% of your earnings, and you have a manager that takes 20%, if you're not cut in on the songwriting, which is where you make all the money, what are you making your money on? Only touring.
Yeah.
And then and these things have very high production costs, so the touring doesn't pay that much at the time, especially with a new artist like that. Right. So she wanted to write songs. This is what I'm thinking. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure she wanted to have songs that were singles that she wrote because she was going to actually make some money. Make some money on it. That had to have been.
Imagine that.
Now, this is just speculation, but...
Yeah, I mean, I just think that...
And that whole thing got aired out in the media there with her and Clive Davis. That's how we know about it. I mean, they talked, he was unhappy with the songs she came with, and he, I don't remember all the details with it, but it was pretty ugly.
I think it's promoting a distorted view of actual musicianship and actual artistry. Again, from people who are just normal, everyday, they like music, they have their bands, but they're not musicians. They're probably not subscribers to any of our channels or anything like that. To them, that is all they see as musical success, and it's all they're being told that musical success is, or a successful career stems from. And so I just think it's really distorting the cultural view of musicality.
I have a question. What is the best, to you guys, the best format for choosing? Which show has the best format for actually deciding on who should be part of The
Voice?
The Voice, definitely.
Yeah.
Because why?
Well, the one thing about The Voice is that they can't see the people singing it first. So it's purely audio.
Yeah.
And what does it sound like? The other thing that I in particular like about The Voice is that when they get to a certain round, the other judges can steal the people back.
Yeah.
So it's not a one and done. You might have bombed one or something like that. You get another choice, and you get the opportunity to work with someone completely and entirely different. But yeah, the backing band on The Voice is just The Voice has the better band for sure.
The Voice has a great band.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But again, getting back to this whole sort of reality TV thing, we don't remember many of the winners or runners up of these shows, but who do we all know the most about? It's the judges on these shows.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's true.
That's another big part of what these shows are kind of designed to do, is promote Simon Cowell's career or Blake Shelton.
But how many of these artists are doing the due diligence on their part when they have all this attention and they have their moment to capture this?
But I don't think that they, in American Idol, the artists are sequestered. They can't. it's not like they can go out and put out a record while they're on the show. They have all these rules that they're bound by when they sign their contract, and I think a lot of them just don't have the experience.
Right.
You know.
No, that makes
and
no
frankly,
sense.
people that I know that had experience that were on the shows that were bad decision makers anyway. So as far as they always made really dumb business decisions, which I was like,
A musician making a dumb business decision?
I know, right? Well, look, this actually kind of comes back to this video I just did about the computers and music and really what I should have said it was the producers of the records that were making decisions about using, for example, this beat detective and fixing everything. The artist gets signed. The A&R guys, for the most part, force them to pick between a couple producers, usually with the A&R guy having a particular person in mind. That there's a lot of glad handing that used to go on when there used to be big budgets back even 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, where they would hire the same people over and over, and there'd be an assembly line. And a lot of times these producers would track the drums, do pre-production, track the drums, and then it would go into assembly line. And these guys, unbeknownst to the bands, would be working on other projects, and they would have multiple projects going on at different studios. And the bands didn't know this, and they would be thrown into a thing like, okay, today's going to be guitars, guitar left, and one guy is playing the guitar parts, and then it goes into some room where there's some dude or woman that is using sitting there lining up everything on the grid, and the bands really didn't know it. In their defense, they had no idea, and they weren't going to complain about it anyways. They were happy to have their record deals.
Right. Yeah,
it's sad. It's same thing with American Idol, that they're not prepared for this kind of success.
Right.
And although it is surprising to me that more people haven't become famous from that, and it may be because of this.
And I think too, especially with the younger contestants, people that are in their late teens through their early 20s. This is just my opinion, and I could be totally wrong, but from what I see, I think you're doing those people a pretty big disservice by plucking them up in their most formative years as a vocalist or an artist and putting them on the international stage and telling someone at 18 years old, congratulations, you've made it. As if they've peaked in their development as an artist and they've made it as far as they can. I just think there's so many people out there, so many artists and singer-songwriters and people that I love that are just finding success in their late 20s to early to mid 30s. There's so many people that I could name off that had they been picked up at 18, 19 years old, I wouldn't have made it past the judges on American Idol, but now are incredible because they've had 15 years to become seasoned and play gigs and tour and make records and screw up and fail and learn and hone in their craft and get better. I think it kind of is doing a disservice to some people, whether they realize it or not. They probably don't, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel that the I just think that the kids are not prepared. I agree with that they're not prepared to be thrown into this, and it's a lot to ask of a young person to. I mean, the enormous pressure to be on one of these shows that is, for that time period, these people are on top of the world.
Yeah.
And many of them will never, ever, not many of them, almost nearly all of them will never have an experience like that again.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to see how many people, if we went back to the beginning of these shows, how many people are still even in music.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder how many of them actually look back and have a positive outlook on it. I mean, I think it's probably mostly positive, I would think. I think the people, not just the exposure, but I think if you have the certain mindset going into it of this is a learning experience, not that this is the end all of what I can achieve in music. But if you look at it and just say, man, I got a shot to really accelerate not just my career, but how I am as a musician, and really, get that boost. And if you look at it that way and it's going to be over and it's going to end, I think the ones that really, have that mindset and view it that way get tremendous benefit.
My friend Michael Johns, who's no longer with us, he got in on American Idol. I think it was the last year. What was the age range at the time? 29, was that it, or 28?
I think so.
I think he did it when he was 28, and he had already gone through a major label record deal. Although I don't think that they talked about that on the show. I think that was the record that we did never got released. That was one of the things, and one of the stipulations was that you couldn't have been signed before.
Really?
Yeah. And I think that they
Stone Cold Amateur.
I think that they made an exception because he
didn't release,
because it was not released.
Yeah.
And to him at the time, I think he felt that this was his only chance to do this.
Yeah.
And he lived for another, I don't know, 7 years or so after that. And it was really a freak accident. He died. He had a blood clot in his ankle that he got from playing tennis one day. And he went to the hospital and he went back home after, and he said his leg was killing him, and they found him the next day. He's gone.
That's crazy, man.
He was just incredibly great guy, really, really dear friend of mine that I worked on a lot of music with. I produced another band of his before he got his deal, and then we wrote a lot of songs together. And we were really good friends, and it was crushing, absolutely crushing. But there was a community of people from that year that toured around, and he was able to go out and make a good living after that because he had been on American Idol. Now, would that have carried over to today? Probably not. Depending on what would have happened.
Don't they do a 1-year tour after the show for the finalists?
Yeah, and he said that was really fun, that they had a great time doing that.
Yeah, I can't imagine that you wouldn't come out on the other side just immeasurably better as a musician and more confident because you've just been literally just put through the fire.
I think that would depend on the person. I think it would completely depend on the person and their experience level and what they were expecting out of the show.
Sure.
Because if you were expecting to go in there and this was your shot and you've made it and you're
to
on
get
top
famous
of the world,
and
you're going to be famous, and then you didn't make it past, whatever, the third round, I don't know that person would come out extremely benefiting from a situation like that. But if, like you said, if you go into it eyes wide open, you're like, yep, which I think is a maturity thing, right? If you kind of know what to expect, like, okay, this could be really good, or this could be, just a couple weeks and then I'm back home doing what I'm doing, then I think that puts you in a much better position after the fact. But yeah, man, I just think I don't know what this is doing for the future of singers.
I think that the main benefit of this is that there are millions of people watching music and watching live music.
Yeah.
That's
being played by musicians.
An incredibly positive thing. Not only the people on stage, but the people in the pit orchestra that you never see.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yeah, shout out to the real heroes of American Idol.
It's totally true.
Not that I didn't enjoy people like Simon and his demeanor. I without someone like that, I think that the shows don't work either.
I actually heard Simon's a pretty nice guy in real life.
Yeah, I heard, actually, my friend Mike told me he was an incredibly great guy.
Yeah.
I don't mean to hurt your
your image, Simon.
I heard that you were a really good guy, so sorry about that. Well, that's all for now. Subscribe to Michael's channel, Guitargate, on YouTube. He's in town visiting, and we hung out at GitCon.
They had a great time.
Together, had a great time. Rhett, subscribe to his channel. You all know him. He's an old timer around here. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe here, too. Bye-bye.